Since ancient times, there has been an ambition for human beings to talk to people who have passed away and ask them about life in the other world. There are those who try to ask the dead about certain matters related to life that only the dead person knows, such as asking about important papers or information that no one else knows. Although there are many ways allegedly to communicate with the dead, there is nothing easier than the Ouija board, that mysterious board that allows you to communicate with the other world, or rather, it is a window to the other world. Many films, books, and television shows examined and studied it, and dealt with strange and mysterious stories that accompanied its use, some of which were real, some of which were fabricated, some of which related to supernatural spiritual powers, and some of which related to mental deception, and all the experiments that were carried out by non-professional people were consistent. They are not qualified to deal with the ghosts and spirits of the other world with a bad ending and events that filled their lives with horror. But today, let us fasten our belts and go back in time to learn about the strange and mysterious history of one of the most famous board games that can be obtained. Note, the Ouija board, whether it is a real connection with the dead or the jinn, or is just a mental deception and nothing more, should not be tried. Even if it is a toy, it is dangerous. First, we have to know the composition of the board and how to play it. It is a board of wood or plastic on which are written the full letters of the alphabet and the numbers from 1 to 10 and the words yes and no and also the words hello and goodbye. There is a pointer made of wood or plastic and it is in the shape of a heart, and in the middle is a glass circle. The game begins with 2 players sitting around the board and put their finger on the pointer, but they should not press hard on the pointer to pray for the next spirit to easily move it to answer their questions. According to what was mentioned, the 2 players will try to summon the spirit by calling on it. What is said at the beginning of the game has not been confirmed, but what we have confirmed is that when you feel the presence of the spirit, ask out loud, "Is there anyone in the room with us?" If there is a presence, the cursor will move to the word yes, and if it does not move, then you have completed your summoning of the spirit. In the event that a spirit or any other entity is present and the cursor moves to the word yes, the players begin sequentially asking questions. If the answer to your question is yes or no, the cursor moves to answer, and if the answer to your question is a word, the cursor moves over the letters of the alphabet sequentially, forming clear words to answer your question. Since the appearance of this game, it has occupied a strong place among games related to the other world, but there are questions that no one has found an answer to. Does this game really call for the desired spirit, or is it a tool that makes you vulnerable to any evil entity that can manipulate you through it, or does it put you in a state of submission? For your mind that deludes you and deceives you with things that do not exist, such as moving the cursor when it is not moved, or you moving the cursor and thinking that a spirit or ghost is the one moving it. So how did the Ouija game begin and appear? The first Ouija board was shaped like the one that exists today and was marketed in the era following the American Civil War, specifically in 1891. By businessmen Elijah Bond and Charles Kennard in Baltimore, Maryland, through their company Kennard Novelty Company, although the patent was private. The Ouija board was registered in 1890. The process of registering the invention has an interesting story. The Patent Registration Office requested proof of the work and validity of the board in order to register the invention. The test was for Bond and Kennard to sit at the board and make the board spell out the name of the registration office employee. Incredibly, the board actually succeeded. He spelled out the name of the registration employee, and this was enough for the board responsible for registering patents to register the board and allow it to be circulated as a toy. The important question here is how the board was able to know the name of the employee and remember him. The patent did not present the method of using the board except for one sentence, either by involuntary muscle movements of the players or by force. another entity which enhanced the game's mystery. At the time it was marketed as a cool discussion board. Originally, the board was designed as a family game, similar to the so-called talking boards, which relied on a type of automatic writing that was famous among the ruling dynasty in China and dates back to the year 1100 AD, when small boards were used to answer questions. However, this small board, which could be called a Ouija board, became popular among the spiritual movements and currents that were sweeping the country like a storm in the 19th century, who believed that the ruling courts of China were offering a relatively simple and easy-to-implement method of speaking with the dead. When Bond and Kennard's invention was released, their product was the choice of all psychics across the United States and abroad. In fact, the owners of the Kennard Novelty Company were not spiritual at all, but they invented the board and made a great effort to profit from it, and the business was doing well. They took advantage of the game's strangeness and its status as somewhere between a tool for mystery and suspense and a family game, and the game aroused intense public interest from spiritualists and families as well as the curious, crazy about the mystery to try anything. The board was not initially called the Ouija board until 1901, when William Fuld took over production. It is claimed that the board herself determined its name when she was asked what she would like it to be called, and this word means good luck in the ancient pharaonic Egyptian language, and the name has stuck to the board until now. A boy continued to receive full credit for producing the board, and his name was the one most associated with the board. In this era, spiritual sciences and anything related to them were very popular, and trying to communicate with the dead was not something strange or bad at all, and it was associated with the Ouija board at that time, infinite numbers of boards, all of which were owned by Fuld, and until now Ouija remains the crowned queen on the throne of all similar boards produced, and this is due to the ease of use, design, shape of the letters, and smooth distribution of the board's contents. Since 1920, you could see the huge rise in the popularity of Ouija until we reached the year 1940, when the company found that it was forced to build new factories in order to meet the increasing market demands for Ouija. During those years, Ouija maintained its high status among spiritualists, and was sometimes used to give evidence and advice to solve crimes that eluded lawmen. But at that time it also had a large number of frightening stories about people who confessed that they had been killed at the urging of the tablet. As I mentioned previously, an evil spirit or entity could evil exploited the board to pass orders to the user of the board. The Ouija board announced itself and its danger through the previously mentioned cases of murder at the behest of the board. It is also said that the death of a boy was due to the board that told him that he would build a building on it. He did not build it, and if he built it, he would die by jumping off it, which is what made a boy actually goes to the building after starting to build it and throwing himself off of it in 1927. In any case, despite the strange stories that were told about the Ouija board, it maintained its popularity until it was sold to Parker Brothers in 1967, which completed the production and sale of the board. With all these strange facts and events surrounding the Ouija board, the Ouija was not considered a satanic tool until the movie The Exorcist was released in 1973 and the appearance of the Ouija board. Ouija makes a prominent appearance, and as a result of the film, the game suddenly turned from an innocent toy into a satanic tool, and Christian groups began to criticize it as a satanic tool and gateway to evil spirits. At the same time, horror films began to include it in the events of the film, which further harmed its reputation, and it became a means used in spiritual gatherings on a large scale. The game was then sold to Hasbro, and until now the game enjoys a great deal of fame, thanks to the artistic works it has covered, such as the films Paranormal Activity 1 and 2 and Origin of Evil, and many television shows that have dealt with the board and stories related to it, as well as many investigations that have been published. In programs, so far, there are many people who say that Ouija is a passageway for spirits and ghosts that connects them to you, and it cannot be underestimated. The game will leave you confused, wondering about the truth of Ouija's work and also about the truthfulness of the information that you obtain from it, and this depends on who answers your questions, which is the spirit. What is required, or is it another evil spirit manipulating you? There is a scientific explanation that says that what happens is the result of something called the kinetic effect, but because I am not here about the scientific explanation, I will leave you to search for the scientific explanation and let us talk about the metaphysical explanation. The Ouija board is considered a tool that enables ghosts or evil spirits to pass some orders and fabricated events to you after telling you the facts. It makes you believe that what the board says is true, and there are many stories that started with just innocent curiosity to try the game and ended with the conjuring of demonic entities or evil spirits, which changed their lives for the worse. Please do not use the Ouija board at all due to its danger. Now we have to back it up with some stories. So here are some stories about people who used the Ouija board. 1. Angela Jackson. She is a single mother of 2 children who wished she had followed her father's advice. She was always attached to anything supernatural and she wished to use the Ouija board, but what prevented her was her father's plea, who died 20 years ago, so that she would never use it because of its danger and that no good would come from it. That was until the night she was with her neighbors and they started playing Ouija. They all sat around the board and asked him who she wanted to ask, and the board answered them Angela, and the board told her that she would be killed by a man carrying a hammer, and after that moment the furniture began to break and the doors began to close very forcefully. After that, she woke up from a nightmare in which a man carrying a hammer was chasing her, and one night she was returning home when she noticed a person behind her carrying a hammer who actually attacked her, but she survived the attack with a severely injured skull. 2. Roland. A young man from Germany said that after watching the movie The Exorcist, he remembered his aunt who died when he was 13 years old. He bought the tablet to try it out and connect with her spirit. After this session, strange events began to occur in the house. Strange sounds, furniture moving from its place, making a thick sound, traces of scratches appearing on his skin. Reverend Schultz took Roland to undergo medical and physical tests, all of which came back normal. While spending the night at Reverend's house, hell began and the strange events multiplied, necessitating an urgent exorcism session. In the end, Reverend was able to expel the soul from Roland's body. 3. In 1986, there were 3 students from one school, 2 girls and a boy. The boy was Johnny. He had been admitted to the hospital and was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis. The 2 girls visited him to raise his morale and decided to try the Ouija board. After the normal questions, they asked an important question about Johnny's illness, and the answer on the board was a specific date, June 24th, 1987. They decided to write the date on a piece of paper, and they actually wrote it down so they could return to it later. Perhaps it was the date of Johnny's recovery and release from the hospital, and with the passage of time and the arrival of the date, they remembered the date and thought with confusion, what could be possible? That happened, and the answer came to them in the form of news of the death of their friend Johnny. For a young man had an aunt who did not marry, and when he asked his father why my aunt did not marry, his father answered him with the story. When his aunt was 17 years old, she was in a relationship with a young man and she was serious about this relationship, and one day she was playing with the Ouija board, so she asked the board a question, "Will this young man marry me?" The tablet answered her, "No," so she asked the tablet, "Will we separate?" And the tablet answered her, "No," so she asked the tablet, "Will one of us die?" The tablet answered her this time, yes. When she asked the tablet, which of us will die, the tablet answered her with one word, goodbye. A few days later, her friend was in an accident and died as a result. 5. Herbert and Nellie were living a normal life until Nellie played with the Ouija board and conjured a spirit. The spirit told her that her husband was cheating on her and that he was giving the other woman money, so Nellie's heart began to eat away at her with jealousy, and she began to put pressure on her husband's nerves and turned his life into hell. All she wanted was for Herbert to confess. Instead, he lost his temper and killed her, bringing a tragic end to their life together. In the end, do not try the Ouija board, as it is extremely dangerous because it conjures spirits, and conjuring spirits is a path of magic.